Right now, the New York Rangers definitely do not have one of the best prospect pools in the entire NHL, but that does not mean that they don't have some really good and really solid prospects that are quite promising and could one day have a pretty good impact at the NHL level. So, in today's video, I figured we would take a look at NHL.com and Dan Rosen's top 5 New York Rangers prospects heading into this upcoming season. And of course, we'll break down each of these prospects individually, kind of take a look at when they may be able to reach the NHL level, kind of talk about their play style, what they could bring to this Rangers team possibly, and also kind of talk a bit about what they may end up possibly doing throughout this upcoming season wherever they're playing, whether that's at the junior level, the college level, or possibly the pro level as well. So let's just get right into it here, and we'll start off with the number 5 prospect they have on the list, and that is EJ Emery, the New York Rangers former first-round pick, number 30 overall back at the 2024 NHL Draft. And EJ Emery is someone who is known to have some pretty good size. They're at 6'3", 180 pounds. He loves to kind of play a pretty physical game there. He's known as being more of a kind of shutdown defensive defenseman, a stay-at-home kind of guy. And also, though, is known as being a kind of elite skater, an elite athlete. So I think that's also a pretty big bonus there as well. He does have some of those intangibles that you really can't quite teach there. So although, yeah, he only had 1 point, 1 assist there in 31 games played for North Dakota University there, of course, this past season. So, yeah, it wasn't the best offensive numbers there, of course, but he is known as being a shutdown, elite, kind of more defensive defenseman, of course, with a physical game, and he is a great skater. So, I think with all that being said, if he continues to develop there, continues to get help from coaches, and just really kind of works on his game there, he has a lot of potential. It's just about kind of putting everything together. So, he'll definitely be quite a few years out from really making the NHL. They have his projected NHL arrival on this article for 2027-28, so we'll see if that ends up happening, but he is a very promising prospect, has, top 4 kind of upside there, maybe top pairing upside. We'll have to wait and see, but it's really about him kind of, really developing his game there because he is still a very raw prospect. Taking a look at a quick little quote here from the article, they go on to say, quote, "I don't think his game is measured on production," or Meyer said, who is the kind of developmental kind of coach for the Rangers. He also says it's his ability to defend and play in all situations in terms of penalty killing, playing against other teams' top players, and shutting them down, being hard to play against. He's so focused on working from the defensive zone out. And of course, I get it. You're looking at a prospect there and you see he only had 1 point in 31 games played, even as, someone who's a shutdown defenseman. That can be a little worrying, but I think when you really kind of dissect this player and you really kind of notice that he is, definitely a really raw prospect still. He's 6'3", 180 pounds, is known as being an elite athlete, elite skater, but definitely has a lot of things to work on, of course. And he is a good shutdown player. He is a pretty physical player as well. So he's got some positives to his game as well. He does have a lot of positives. He does have a lot of stuff to work on as well, but that's kind of why it seems like he does have a pretty high potential and could maybe one day become a really great top 4 caliber defenseman who is just an elite athlete and a shutdown defenseman. So there's definitely some potential there, but obviously we'll have to wait and see whether or not he's able to actually hit that. And next up here, we have the Rangers' top pick from this past NHL draft in 2025, and that, of course, was the 43rd overall pick in the second round, Malcolm Spence. This was someone who, heading into this past kind of draft year, last summer kind of thing, was projected as kind of being a definite first-round pick, maybe even like a top 10 to 15, top 20 guy possibly. So this was someone who was very highly rated, had some kind of health condition there that kind of messed things up a bit with his kind of body. I believe kind of made him lose a bit of weight there, something like that this past season. So he definitely had some kind of health problems, but still ended up having 73 points in 65 games played in his draft year with the Erie Otters, is now committed to go play for the University of Michigan at the college level, of course. So he's going to get to play against some real great players at that kind of level, of course. So that's nice there. He'll become a freshman, of course. So I think it'll be interesting to kind of see how he develops with a great program. Of course, there in Michigan, they have developed a ton of great NHL players over the years, and they definitely should have a very stacked team with a bunch of other great NHL prospects and some other kind of guys who are, potential 2026 NHL draft prospects as well. I believe Adam Valentini came over as well. So they should have a pretty stacked team there, of course, but he's definitely an interesting prospect. Has some kind of similarities to someone like a Will Cooley almost, and kind of Brennan Othman as well. He's a kind of grittier, two-way kind of defensive winger as well, but offensive as well. He's just a really solid kind of all-around player, can kill penalties, can be on the power play, can just be a good kind of two-way player, but also, be a good forechecker, bring some intensity, some kind of energy to the game there, but also be a pretty good offensive threat as well, and is a pretty solid skater. So I think all around has a great game, and definitely is one of those kind of playoff-style players. So this is someone who, down the road, if the Rangers are making a long playoff run there, he definitely could be one of those kind of really big key guys for this team, just like a Will Cooley, a JT Miller type, even a Brendan Othman type there. Those kind of players, he has a lot of those kind of similarities in his game, which is obviously great. And in the article, they do go on to say, quote, his speed is a weapon, Ortmeyer said. His skating ability too. He's tenacious with the puck. He's been able to produce at the junior level. I think it'll be a good spot for him to develop. Obviously talking about Michigan, which I absolutely agree with as well. And his projected NHL rival is also 2027-28, just like EJ Emery. Next up here, they go with Brennan Othman as the number 3 prospect. And of course, this past season, he had at the NHL level only 2 assists for 2 points in 22 games played, and also had 27 games played with the Hartford Wolfpack in the AHL, getting 12 goals, 8 assists, 20 points total. So definitely did not produce at a phenomenal level offensively throughout this past season. Even in the AHL, I mean, you would have liked to see those numbers be a little higher, but he is still, of course, a player in his early 20s. He's still, of course, the former 16th overall pick back at the 2021 NHL draft, former first-round pick. I think has a nice kind of two-way game for the most part there, can be a pretty solid kind of physical player. We saw that at moments from this past season at the NHL level, which I think that was great and all. Can be, I think, a probably decent defensive winger. Isn't going to be a complete kind of shutdown guy, but can hold his own. There won't be a liability. Has a pretty good shot there. Has some good kind of offensive game, of course, but still needs to work on his game and still needs to develop in pretty much all areas. So I think he's got some stuff to work on for sure, like I said, but he is someone who can make an impact at the NHL level throughout this season at some point there. Whether he makes the kind of team on opening night, we'll have to wait and see. There'll be some kind of fierce competition there with other prospects like Brett Berard, Gabe Perreault, of course, and even some other guys down there in the AHL as well, but also some vets. So there's going to be a lot of competition there. We'll see if Othman makes it, but he is definitely one of the better prospects in the system. I don't quite know if I'd have him at number 3 at this point because I don't really know if that upside is as high as I kind of thought it was once, but I do think he is still a great prospect. I just think there's some other prospects in the system that I would have higher ranked than him because of their kind of upside, but I still think Othman is a great prospect, and I am still a big fan of Othman. Of course, I did get to watch him win the OHL championship with the Peterborough Petes back a while ago as well, and in the article, they do go on to say, quote, we're excited to see the work he has put in this summer and what he learned last year, Ortmeyer said. And next up here, we've got the prospect that was picked up in the trade involving Keandre Miller getting signed and traded over to the Carolina Hurricanes. And of course, that player is Scott Morrow, a right-handed defense prospect who is NHL ready, which is phenomenal. This is a player who ended up having 14 games played throughout this past regular season with the Carolina Hurricanes, having 6 points, 1 goal, 5 assists in 14 games played as a right-handed defenseman. In the AHL, had 52 games played, 13 goals, 26 assists for 39 total points. And also in the playoffs, he ended up having 5 games played, no points, but still, got a bit of a taste there of playoff hockey at the NHL level, which is definitely a bonus. But overall, he's known as just being a really solid kind of, I would say definitely more of an offensive guy than a defensive guy, but is somewhat of a kind of two-way defenseman. Isn't necessarily bad defensively, just is more on the offensive kind of side of things there. So I think, that's not a bad thing. It's just that's what he is. So really solid defenseman, can definitely move the puck there, which has been an issue for this team at moments. So I think having just a kind of solid puck-moving offensive defenseman there who has a decent kind of defensive game, nothing too crazy though, can be a solid kind of plus for this team. He's still only like 22 years old, so he's still very young. And of course, he definitely could make an impact at the NHL level at some point throughout this upcoming season. We'll see whether or not he ends up making the opening night lineup. And I think a big kind of factor into that is whether or not this team is willing to put a guy like Braden Schneider on that second pair to become that left-handed defenseman. Because if they don't and they have him on the right side, well, your 1, 2, 3 on the right side is set. You got Foxy, and then you have for the second and third pair, either one of Will Borgen and Braden Schneider. So if he goes to the left side there, though, then you have that kind of third pair kind of right-handed spot open, which you can slide Scott Morrow into. So that's the only way I really see him actually, making the NHL lineup to begin this upcoming season, is if Braden Schneider does move to the left, which is definitely a possibility. And I actually do want to see that happen there. Instead of seeing a guy like Carson Soucy on that second pair, I'd rather see a guy like Schneider make the switch over to the left there on that second pair, which also opens up the kind of ability for Morrow to be in the lineup. And at number 1, of course, they have Gabe Perreault, which is not surprising at all. He ended up having this past season at the NHL level, 5 games played, no points, but did have some flashes of showing some stuff at the NHL level. Then at the college level, though, with Boston College, ended up having 37 games played, 48 points, 16 goals, 32 assists, put up some phenomenal numbers, and definitely, I think, has the potential to be a real superstar player in the NHL. He can be that kind of 100-point kind of threat there offensively. I think he's going to be that maybe kind of Panarin-type guy where he's not going to bring much defensively, of course, but can be an elite offensive threat, which is not a bad thing at all. So there's the potential there, but it's about him kind of developing in that. So that's the big question right now. And of course, there's also another big question with him, and that's where he'll start this upcoming season. It could be the NHL or AHL. Either one makes sense. I mean, it just kind of depends what the Rangers want to do in that kind of top 6 at the NHL level, whether or not they have a spot for Gabe or whether or not they'd want him on that third line or rather him in that kind of, top 6 or top line in the AHL, getting top minutes down there. So that's the big question right now, whether or not to have him in the AHL or NHL with Gabe. I'm for either way. I just think if he's going to be in the NHL, he better be in that top 9 for sure, game in and game out, getting power play 2 minutes at least. Otherwise, there's no point of having him in the NHL, and you might as well develop in the AHL. So that's kind of the big question. But either way, he's a very highly rated prospect and definitely is an elite offensive threat. And in the article, they go on to say, quote, "He's putting the work in and knows what he needs to do to get himself ready and showcase what he can do," Rangers Director of Player Development Jed Ortmeyer said. Anyways, that's going to do it for today's video. If you have enjoyed, definitely don't forget to click that like and subscribe button for daily New York Rangers content, as I do post a video about the New York Rangers every single day. And also, definitely don't forget to comment down below your thoughts on today's video. What are your thoughts on this top 5 prospects list? Who would you have in your top 5? And also, who are your top prospects that maybe we're left off this list there? I think someone like a Noah Laba was a pretty good kind of honorable mention maybe. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I'll catch you next one, and let's go Rangers.